We had. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We are here today with the author of the Mara Dyer trilogy, Michelle Hodkin. Welcome, Michelle, to Romania.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me. So excited to be part of this.
So, The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer was your first book, the first book you ever write. Tell us, please, about the idea of the book and how did you wrote it? Was it a hard process, or I don't know, the story came to you in an instant?
It didn't really come to me it both did and did not come to me in an instant. I think it was brewing for about 17 years. And I'd never imagined being a writer before. I never planned on being a writer. I was practicing law as an attorney. I was doing civil anti-terrorism litigation, which included working on the September 11th cases and on behalf of victims of terror attacks. And I had gone to visit my brother when he was graduating, my middle brother, the one who Daniel is based off of, or the one who inspired Daniel, I should say. And he made a joke that made me think of something else, and it sort of sparked this experience that I'd had with a girl who had been in a traumatic accident, and her mother was reaching out for legal counsel. And so just all of these things came together at once, and I started writing the idea just on the flight. I started just writing on the flight back from New York, and I was living in a different city or different state at the time. And the next day I had 5,000 words, and the next week I had 20,000 words. I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and didn't stop to do anything else. And then I realized that I couldn't do that and my 80-hour-a-week job, and I just rolled the dice, and I felt that I couldn't not write it. The story, the idea for the story that coalesced around this girl who something was happening to, and I was figuring out the pieces of her story as I was writing it, and I could not do it. So I got lucky and worked hard, and I would say it was probably the easiest book that I'd ever written, from first words to getting an agent, or even from first words to having the book sell to Simon and Schuster at auction. That was a year and 10 days, which is an incredibly fast time for a debut author. So I was floored, but also just really, really passionate. Once it became, my job, I didn't know that, in my heart, like I didn't really know or totally believe, I guess, that it would find the kind of audience that it did. And so every book, successively was, I think, presented its own challenges. And I was just very aware that there were people listening. And sometimes I think when you don't have other voices, that you're concerned about pleasing editors, agents, readers, fans, it can be easier in a way to just, not have that. So yeah, I would say it was the easiest book, but it definitely wasn't easy. I think I did put in the time, the hours, but yeah, there were a lot of revisions. There were 30 drafts.
Yeah, I think it was a struggle, but it has been 10 years now, and looking back, seems a romantic period for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the law background. Did it help you in writing the book?
Yes and no. What it helped with was my experience in working day to day at the time I had been traveling back and forth to Israel, and our clients were Israeli and American victims of suicide bombings and other terrorist attacks. And every single one of them, as you can imagine, experienced post-traumatic stress disorder. And just, you know, every shade of that there possibly can be, because every person is unique and is not going to process events in the same way. So I really got an up-close, in-depth look at just how multifaceted that experience is for, and just how it can reach every aspect of somebody's life, even if they don't outwardly present or outwardly feel like they're experiencing it. You know, for example, I represented, you know, teenagers who had been in a bus that was attacked by a suicide bomber, and you know, they were very casually describing, you know, just, you know, the gore and the awfulness. Whereas, you know, a man who was an older person who had, you know, seen a lot of hard things already in his life, he was the driver of a bus that had been attacked. And he went into a full-on PTSD flashback during the deposition. So I just got a sense of how vivid those flashbacks can be. Like, he was there. He was not in the room with us at the time. He just was transported mentally to where he was. And I think that aspect of it did help in sort of figuring out, you know, what someone who was going through what Mara was going to be going through and what she had experienced might process things, especially because, you know, she's a teenager, and teenagers don't always have, you know, everybody's brains are still growing until they're 26, I think, is when your brain is finally fully formed. But, you know, neurons are still building and connections are still building. And in Mara's case, you know, I wanted her to think that she was aware and very self-aware, but to not necessarily be aware of, you know, the ways that PTSD was affecting her life.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. You partially answered it. I wanted to know if you did any psychological research for Mara Dyer character, because what she experienced, her thoughts, her emotions are so real to the reader.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, first of all. It's an incredible compliment. I feel like, at least for me, you know, if I'm feeling something strongly, if that's a moment when I just take to pen and paper or my laptop and try and get those experiences down on the page. But I definitely did do psychological research to make sure that her feelings, her experiences, her point of view, the medications she was on, you know, her mother is a psychologist. I wanted those interactions to be real and to feel real, or at least authentic to one character's experience. Not everyone with PTSD is going to experience it the same way, but I do think that there's a responsibility, especially when, you know, writing about mental health, to do the work and to research. And so I consulted with a child psychologist at New York University, and I had each of my characters diagnosed, you know, like, if someone was acting this way and presenting this way and their families were saying this about them, you know, what would you think after maybe a few sessions? And so I got diagnoses for my characters, which helped me fill out and round out things that I wrote in the evolution of Mara Dyer, when everybody's looking at their files and kind of shocked by what they see there. Yeah, I think research is important, but it's also,
Yeah.
you know, not necessarily everything. You want to make sure you're getting a global kind of aerial view, and also just.
So Mara Dyer voice came naturally to you, or have you built this character from idea to full character?
I think that Mara's came more naturally than everyone else's. I had trouble with it, a little bit of trouble in the beginning when I was trying to figure out, I guess, not necessarily who she was, because I wrote Mara almost knowing her ending arc. I knew her ending more than I knew her beginning. So I wanted to make sure from that first page and that first paragraph, you get a sense of where she's at by the end of her trilogy, but it doesn't show you where she was before. And so writing that sort of transition, like when she's in the first chapter, when she's with Rachel and Claire, I did 30 plus drafts of that chapter, just trying to make that voice feel authentic. I think that when she's with her, writing the interactions between her brothers was probably one of the easier things for me, because I was borrowing voices from people that I know, which definitely helps fill things in. I mean, all the characters are their own people for sure, and I've deviated from their real life counterparts in many, many critically important ways. But it definitely, at the time, I was just doing this for a lark, really. Like it was something that came to me, and I didn't plan on. I didn't really know, I didn't really fully know how much I guess I didn't really fully know Mara until I finished her story. And I think that's true for me with every book. Like, I have to look back on them after the fact and be like, oh, I was trying to say this and working through this time. So yeah, it was the process of discovering her voice. Long.
Wonderful. One of the most interesting aspects in Mara Dyer trilogy is the genetic memory. Mara has a very strong connection with her grandmother. How did you bring that into the story?
That's such a good, specific question. Thank you for asking it, because it was really important to me at the time, and I guess always just as a reader. I always wonder, like, how things happen in books, like the science of it, if something's possible. It's one thing if I'm reading fantasy and there's like an entire, hand-waving passage of disbelief, but there are some books that I've read where it's just like, no, this creature doesn't exist, fairies don't exist, or vampires don't exist, or werewolves don't exist, and then it's like, boom, the character finds out they do, and it's just like, oh, okay, now I live in a world with creatures. And that at the time never felt authentic. And I think that I've always been writing these books for my 15-year-old self. And so I really wanted to interrogate the science that could make everything in these books possible. One of the things I think that distinguishes this series from other books is, not all of them, but some of them, is that, in Mara and, Noah and everybody's case, it could be in their head. You are reading from their perspective, but at the same time, it's kind of possible. We don't know, we can't really disprove things like that. So, we don't really know what else is out there, maybe. And so I wanted to leave that open, that idea that Mara could be a person who's real, someone out there. I've had these experiences, and I'm sure other people have as well, but if you think something's going to happen and it happens, you're like, I wonder, I just wonder, is it coincidence? Did something happen? So yeah, that's genetic memory specifically was something that I thought was a good way. It borrowed from things that exist in science, and also it's not really, it hasn't, I guess it's been disproven to the extent that, things like this can be, but it felt real enough that it could be manipulated in a way that would work within the magic / science fiction aspect of the book, the paranormal aspect of the books.
So we have the first questions from your readers. So Theodora, please, would you ask your question?
Yeah. Hi, Michelle. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming here and being with us. My question is quite simple, I guess. I read your books a few years ago, back when I was in my teens. And it helped me realize a lot of things about psychology as a topic, first of all. And it got me into reading more of that. And my question was specifically mostly about you, because whenever I'm reading, I also try to put myself in the author's shoes. And when I do that, I also think about what are the habits of the author? What does he do? What or she does? What does she do whenever she's writing a new book? So I really wanted to ask you about music, because I know music is really like very inspirational at most of the times. So I kind of wanted to ask you what kind of music or what artists inspired you to write, or if you actually listen to music while writing.
I mean, I definitely have at points. I mean, there's a phase, I guess the drafting phase is a phase where I alternate between listening to music and trying to get the right playlists, and I'll fiddle with playlists and trying to get the mood right. Once I know what the mood and the atmosphere is for a book, you know, that sort of goes into like one bin, and then scenes that I'd love to write goes into another bin. And, you know, music can sometimes help me pull it together. Revising, I tend to listen to a lot of scores and soundtracks that don't have, you know, nothing with lyrics, because it's too many words coming at me. But gosh, I don't even know if I could pull up Spotify at this point. But I know that like at the time that I wrote Mara, I was listening to just a lot of like 2009 stuff.
That's nice.
Yeah, like very specific, like Death Cab for Cutie, like other later books. I think it might have been The Becoming of Noah Shaw that felt really like a Halsey book.
Nice.
So, you know, it's kind of evolved, even though the characters are all still in the same time period. Like they're one of the things I love about Noah is that he has very eclectic taste, but it's also not really pop. Like Mara's much more like, oh, you know, this song came on the radio, I like it now. And Noah's he's very much into it, and it's important to him in a different way. It's more significant to him in that way. So for me, yeah, I would say that, you know, it at different phases of writing, like it takes on a different significance. But there are a lot of times where I don't write to anything at all. Like I just need nothing, and just to stare and get it done. But the Lost soundtrack, absolutely, I listen to over and over. There's Jurassic Park, of course, Inception. There's just a lot of, there's a lot of
scary, but it sounds nice.
There's a lot of like, I mean, I guess maybe that's why the books feel so tense, like it's because like I'm listening to things and they're just like, there's like something, what's gonna happen next, what's around the corner, and I'm listening to that stuff, and so it's putting me on edge. I don't think that I listen to a lot of like joyful music when I'm writing. Maybe I should. It's either like sad or just really tense and ominous.
Thank you for answering. You're amazing.
You're amazing. Thank you so much.
So now we have Diana with her
Michelle.
question.
I'm really happy to finally meet you. I have 2 questions for you. First of all, I want to know who's your favorite character from the first trilogy?
Wow. Okay. It's impossible to choose, I think, just like it's impossible to choose a favorite child. I mean, yeah, I don't know that I could choose. I like different characters in different scenes and at different points of their respective evolution.
Or do you see yourself in one character?
All of them. All of them, I would say, except for Daniel and Joseph, who I borrowed. I borrowed their personalities from existing human beings, and then I messed with them in the way that I wanted to. But really, like, I think that the longer that I've been in this world and have inhabited these characters, the more I've realized that they're all me, and they're all just different parts of me. Some of Jamie's experiences were some of my experiences. He was also originally inspired by someone I had known, but that was just on a more superficial level, like just in terms of a dialogue and voice and character, which helps inform my plot level. Mara and Noah are just different aspects of myself, and it's I contain multitudes, but it is it's a challenge also, so they're very different and they have also
Okay, and secondly, I want to know where the idea of Noah came from.
Well, Noah came from Mara. I was trying to think of what kind of boy would fall in love with the kind of girl that Mara would end up being, and want to be in love with her. And so from that, I developed his character. Mara is someone, I don't know if I should, just no spoilers. Is it spoilers allowed? Like, I don't know. No spoilers. Oh. Okay, so, Mara is someone who starts the series in one place and ends in a very different place. And I wouldn't say that her journey is necessarily, it's not analogous to Breaking Bad, but she does go through a process where she reclaims her power, and comes into her power and has to choose for herself how to use it. And Noah is someone who is very attracted to that, because he's someone who is assumed to have a lot of power just by virtue of being who he is, having money, being attractive. He has all of this privilege, and it's sometimes assumed incorrectly that people with every possible advantage and gift are not struggling themselves, and he really does. And he's attracted to things that aren't necessarily healthy for him, and I think that's how he came to be. So
thank you very much.
Thank you, Diana. The next one is Andrea. Andrea, Diana.
Hi, Michelle. I'm so nervous.
No, I'm nervous.
I wanted to say something before asking you the question. So back in 2018, I think you did an Instagram giveaway of the Mara Dyer trilogy, and you had a bunch of versions and a lot of languages. And I remember applying to, and I actually ended up getting the Romanian versions autographed by you along with a letter, and I'm so excited to.
Oh, good. I'm so happy. So you actually did get them. They did arrive in the mail. I'm so thrilled. Yeah. I remember doing that giveaway and then not realizing until after the fact, like, what a task it was, just assembling and mailing all of these books. So I'm so thrilled that they made it. That makes me really happy.
Yeah, and they're my most prized possession, honestly, along with the letter.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
No.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask, what was the greatest challenge you faced while writing the trilogy?
there have been a lot. I think, well, for the trilogy and the series as a whole, it's a challenge that I think that no one else I know has experienced, but no other writer that I know, but it's that I didn't know that, or I didn't know that I could expect, or that it was even a possibility, that I wouldn't have the same editor all the way through the series. People come and go and take different jobs in publishing, things happen. And so I am the only author that I know who will have had 5 editors for 6 books. So that's been a challenge. I don't know if it's the biggest challenge, because there are different challenges at different points, but that has definitely has an effect, because it's almost like a marriage, and so you start out with one person and then you find out you're in an arranged marriage all of a sudden with a new person, except you've got to parent the baby, which is the book. And like to make sure that all the successive babies get along and work well together, and that your parenting ideas are on the same page. And so it's tricky. It's a challenge, definitely. And I think it's something that is probably unique to me, just because of how long the series has gone on, and just for whatever reason, like that's been the luck, like that's been those are the cards that I was dealt. So working around that and making sure readers know that it takes a village to produce a book. It's not just, I can't just release whatever I want and write whatever I want. It depends really on a lot of people. So yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine it's been hard. I also wanted to ask, do you only write on your computer or your laptop, or do you also find yourself kind of writing in a notebook when, for example, there's an idea you have to get out?
Yeah, I write in notebooks all the time. I have 1,000 notebooks, and the challenge is that's another challenge is making sure I remember, because I carry like little notebooks with me everywhere, and I'll just write things. I'll see something, have an idea, or just a sentence or a fragment of a sentence, and that'll spark a thing. I've written just in the dark in movie theaters. I've been watching like a movie, and then I'll just like whip out, and people are like, what are you doing? Who are you? Yeah, so it's both. The bulk of my writing I do on my laptop in a program called Scrivener, which is just absolutely magical. It changed everything for me. I can't imagine being able to write, especially a series, without it, because that's where just it allows you to look at multiple things all at once. It's almost like having at least 2 monitors or 3 monitors or something, just so you can just switch back and forth from the first book to compare different chapters, especially for point of view shifts and flashback scenes. But the little travel notebooks and little scraps of paper and the backs of receipts and things I also write on, and then have to save and find and then add to my notes file, which is an ongoing project. I think I have like 3,000 of those, 3,000 that I have to add to the overall file. Yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that I like writing too. And the beginning of the 3rd book in the Mara Dyer series starts with like some sort of interview kind of thing. And so that really inspired me to write my own. Yeah, it inspired me so much. You have no idea.
I'm so glad. That is tremendous news. I applaud you for just going with it, for just being inspired, and then having the guts to go for what you want and to write. And it's not easy facing the blank cursor. And yeah, I'm so glad that my book helped you launch what will be your next book, or your first book, perhaps.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me.
Good
Thank
luck.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. The next one is Karina.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here. And my first question is, how did you come up with this idea of Noah and Mara having opposite superpowers and being complete opposites? This idea we get to explore more in the third book.
Yeah. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying before, was if Mara, I can't imagine two people like Mara or like Noah being able to get on for long. We're often attracted to traits in others that we don't necessarily possess, but that we admire. And so I was trying to, when I thought of Mara and, you know, where she ends up, you know, and the things she does and the person that she becomes by the end of the third book, and then even later on, things that she's okay with, and, you know, her values, and I guess, you know, her different lines in the sand. I was thinking, like, well, who would be attracted to someone who feels this way about the world and who has this outlook on and perspective about things? And to me, that would be somebody who, you know, for Noah, he outwardly seems like he has everything, but he actually has so much less than Mara. You know, his family relationships are extremely fractured, and he doesn't have that kind of support system, so he's drawn to somebody who does. You know, Mara is loved unconditionally by her family, which is a really incredible, like, that was a choice that I made deliberately because I wanted her, I never wanted her to make later choices, which I won't give away, but choices about what she would do, what she was okay with, and what she found acceptable, to be blamed on, well, she had a bad childhood, and that's why. You know, and Noah is supposed to be like the good guy and the hero, and, you know, he has this like good power, but, you know, as is explored later on in the books, like, everybody's abilities, whatever they are, they can be used for good purposes or bad purposes, and, like, we can all use our best qualities for terrible reasons. You know, we might be an amazing, like, let's say we're a great writer, we're a great persuasive writer, we want to write political speeches. We could use that to help someone who is, you know, a bad politician who's going to make choices that, you know, limit all kinds of freedoms. Or we could use that same good power of ours to help someone who is going to lift up people who are marginalized and disadvantaged. So yeah, that's kind of a long, I hope, satisfactory answer of how I sort of conceived of these two very opposite people who, you know, have things in common, but also admire different aspects of each other.
Thank you so much for answering. And I also wanted to ask you, what is it like writing from Noah's point of view? Is it harder than writing from Mara's?
Thank you for asking. It was a challenge when I shifted, I think, and I wanted, only because I hold myself, and by writing and what I put out there into the world for you guys, to such a high standard, I was determined to get his voice authentic and correct. So I started spending a lot of time in the UK, in England, particular, you know, where sort of his family seat was, and, like, just paths that he had trodden, and just to, you know, they say that British English and American English are like, or England and America are two countries separated by a common language, and it's very true. Like, just the grammar is different, and I'm, you know, still learning it, and I really tried to do as much personal immersion as I could in order to, as if I were writing from a completely different, you know, writing in a different language, in order to inhabit his character and make it feel like, you know, yes, a posh English 17-year-old boy would say these things and behave this way and do these things. Not all of them, but Noah certainly. And yeah, so the tonal shift required research that from Mara I didn't feel I necessarily had to do. Her voice, I think, I was able to capture just based on having experienced things that were similar.
Thank you so much for answering. I loved reading from Noah's point of view. It felt so much like him.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to ask you, what's your favorite scene you've ever written, or the one you are the most proud of?
It's a good question. I think, so there's two answers that I could give. Probably the kosher answer would be the first paragraph of the first book. I am actually genuinely very, very proud of that paragraph. It took a lot of work to craft and to end up there, but figuring out, once I got the hook for the first sentence, you know, I still feel like I'm still like thrilled, and it does give me goosebumps to like hear it in an audiobook and just hear people repeat it. And even when I do readings now, like it makes me really, I feel gratified when I read it back again. The other one that I'm really proud of is chapter 73 of The Retribution, which is the third book. It is a love scene between Mara and Noah. I am proud of that for different reasons. I'm proud of that one just because I think it's hard to, I think those kinds of scenes are hard to write without veering into what for me would feel cheesy or just like cringe worthy. And so I felt like that was a scene that was, that I would have read as a very cynical, very, very cynical 15-year-old. And I would have been like, no, that's hot. So yeah, those are your answers.
I think that everyone loved that scene. Thank you very much for answering.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. The next one is Sophie. Sophie? Please open your mic.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just got it out. Hi, Michelle. I'm actually from Argentina, and I am so happy to finally meet you because your series was the first one I started because of Bookstagram, and I love it so much. And first of all, I wanted to ask you, how are you doing? Or like, how are you doing after the horrible pandemic that we all went through?
Thank you. It's been, like, no lie, it's been tough. I think everybody has had a different degree of, everyone's had a different experience, but a whole generation of my family was wiped out. So that has been just hard on a personal level. And yeah, it's been tough, but it's also been joyful. Like I've had opportunities that I wouldn't have had because of the pandemic. Some of them like just really phenomenal and ecstatic, but it is, I think that it is especially hard, the phase we're in right now where everybody wants to be done and feels very done with it, and is acting perhaps like it's over, but we have to remind ourselves that, you know, this is not normal and everyone processes trauma differently. Like, you know, it's not even normal necessarily for us to be having a book event online. You know, the fact that that has become commonplace is, once, you know, it's great in some sense, like I can be in Romania without, or Argentina without physically having to be there. But on the other hand, like I would love to be there. And the fact that everything arose because of, well, you know, many different factors, but, you know, environmental and the way that, you know, we are treating our planet, and political factors in America, certainly the way that the pandemic was allowed to take hold because of the prior administration. And those are all very difficult to still reconcile with, you know, the fact that America's reached the 1 million death milestone is not normal. Like we had vaccines early, and so many people are still getting sick when they don't have to, because of just rampant disinformation, and every country and every person has had their own challenge, but it's been tough. Like there's no other way to really place it. Like I think it's fair to say that we're all affected. We've all been affected by these last few years, and to just have compassion and kindness for whoever we meet or encounter, because we don't know what they've suffered, what they've been through, is especially important. It's always important because you never know, but it's especially important now. Just having that kindness and empathy, because everyone's been through something. Like we've all experienced globally, just different levels of tragedy, whether it's, you know, having our work affected or friendships, or, you know, just not being able to see people we love, not being able to mourn in person people we've lost, all of that cumulatively have an effect. So yeah, it's been hard, but I'm also very, very lucky, and I'm aware of how lucky I am. So, and you know, new things have come into my life, like directly because of the pandemic, and I'm fortunate, you know, like I'm fortunate, but it's all a challenge, and we're all doing the best we can to work through it, I think.
Oh, thank you, and I'm really sorry to hear about your family. I hope you're doing better now. And regarding with the Noah Shaw trilogy, with a friend we read it together, and we have a theory that we don't know how your mind works, but it appeared that the Reckoning of Noah Shaw and the Retribution of Mara Dyer kind of like were like similar, despite the fact that they were published so many years later. And I wanted to know, like, how did you do it? Like, how did the Reckoning came up? And like, and then second of all, how dare you with the ending?
Yeah, I hear that. I hear the second part a lot. That's a really great question that you asked, and I have to be honest with you completely. I don't know that I realized that those books mirrored each other the way that they do. It was, you know, it's hard, I think, when you're producing books on a schedule and you're aware of the audience and you're aware of the team that, you know, is trying to make them happen. It can be hard to see the big picture when you're in it. And so only kind of having the time to pull back and just be like, oh, like, wait, like the characters are in sort of a parallel place, not the same because everybody's, you know, still evolved, but parallel. You know, if the multiverse were real, like they'd be experiencing, and maybe it is, they'd be experiencing things, you know, sort of on the same, at the same place. And I think it does make sense in hindsight because, of course, Noah is experiencing his own, like he had to reckon with himself. You know, he makes different choices than Mara would have made because he's a completely different person than Mara is, and just has a very different outlook, which I would say is more flexible than Mara's. But it definitely changed the trajectory for the series, and I think yeah, that'll have ripple effects out. Yeah.
So we're just gonna have to wait for the third book to come out, right?
Yeah. I wish I could tell you more about that. I think alluded to some of the things, but I can't say more. Like I just can't. Get into so much trouble.
It's okay, but it's coming.
It is coming. It's coming.
Okay.
As far as I know, it's coming. If it's not, then I have not been told. So, but there's just been so much, you know, like I said, you know, it takes a village, and there's just been so much change for everyone, myself included. And, you know, I also just, you know, I experienced chronic illness. And so I can't just churn out books like I could before. If, you know, I have something called mast cell activation syndrome and Ehlers-Danlos and postural orthostatic tachycardia, which coincidentally, Halsey also just came out saying that she has this week. But, you know, just knowing that, you know, pushing myself to do things at, you know, an unhealthy pace can really harm me. I have to sort of guard my time and be careful with, I have to be, you know, careful on a lot of different levels. Just, I want to make sure that everything is the best that it can possibly be, and that, you know, I'm in a place that I'm able to produce those words and something that's going to last forever, because books do last forever. Like, once something is in print, you cannot take it back. And I am reckoning with that, you know, all these years after I first started writing in 2009. So yeah, I want to make sure that it's the book that you deserve. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
And I honestly can't wait for to read it. And I just wanted you to know your series is on my top 3 favorites because of how much it means to me. It always has.
Thank you. That means the world to me. I'm not overstating that. It is, I think it's hard. I've taken a break from social media, as many of you have known, or might have noticed, because I popped on just to say I was doing this event. I did that again because I'm trying to be careful about, like, preserving what's important and my own, like, stress and space, and being so contactable, and, you know, hearing everybody's voices. You know, it can be positive and it can also be negative, and I've had both experiences, and I've really missed all of the positive interactions. Like, I've missed that a lot. And so hearing, you know, just to filter out the negative ones, and hearing that it means so much to you, like, really, like, helps refill, you know, my creative well. So I appreciate that. Thank you. You're helping to fuel my current work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. The next one is Carla.
Yes, hello everyone. Hello, Michelle. It's so nice to finally meet you. I am a Peruvian fan and got to know your books a long time ago. The Mara Dyer series means a lot to me, and I think it's the same for all of us here. And well, last year it was the 10th anniversary of the publication of Unbecoming, I think. And so I wanted to ask you, how have your feelings towards your books or writing changed through the years? What do these characters, this story means to you as of today? What it means to you now?
That is such a great, insightful question. It's funny, like, I probably would have one point said, like, I didn't have a favorite book, and, you know, there was no way to choose, or perhaps not had the distance or the longevity to just even evaluate them at all. I think that, I mean, the characters, I think, are more important to me now than ever. It's interesting because, like, you know, I've been living with them for so long, but I can now recognize, I have different sort of tools in my writing toolbox that I did when I started and had no idea what I was doing and wrote absolute, like, absolute garbage, and presented it to friends, and they're like, this is trash, but keep going. And, you know, the book no longer resembles, I mean, it hasn't for a very long time. It was a steep, fast learning curve, but, you know, now, you know, I'm so aware of, like, the fact that these, you know, these characters mean something to people, and, you know, they mean something to me, and I feel responsibility to them, to myself, to all of you, to honor them in the best way that I can, or to the best of my ability. And that means, like, not cutting corners, time-wise, or, you know, in any other way, craft-wise. You know, I don't know that I would have been able to write the way that I write now, you know, 7 years ago, So even like it's hard to sometimes be compassionate looking back at older work, but I can see what I was working through at the time and what I was trying to do. At least I tried different things, at different times, and sometimes my ambition outweighed my ability, but I've always done my absolute, I know that I've always done my absolute utmost to make sure that that the final execution would be as good as it possibly could be, and as good as I could make it. So that's, I think, personal answer. You'd have to direct me back to if I glossed over something, if there's more.
No, well, I just wanted to say thank you for writing these books. We really appreciate all the effort you put into all of them. And well, thank you so much for answering, Michelle. And I hope we can really see you more often. Soon.
I'm planning a move that might actually make that happen. So yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, thank you,
Carla. Rosie sent us a message. How is the last book coming along? So I guess you just answered earlier. So it will come out soon. So.
Yeah, I mean, I hope soon, but there are things that I have control over and things that I don't, and books are a mixture of that, and yeah, and I'm doing everything in my power. I definitely want it out, but I also want the right book out, and yeah, it's the ending to these characters' stories, or at least for a good long while. And yeah, it's important that I honor that.
Yeah. The next question comes from Bianca.
So hello, I'm very, very happy to meet you. I wanted to say that I read the first book in the trilogy 2 years ago, I think. And then I started talking about the first book last year with one of my greatest friends. And she made me a surprise and read it for the first time and was very, very excited. So we decided to read the second and third book together. And I remember that we planned on reading the last part of the second book together, but she was really excited and she read it before me. So I ended up reading it with her on Instagram, but she already knew what was going to happen. So she just looked at my reactions and things like this. And I was so excited and immersed in the book. I mean, I was just opening and closing the book and I was like, what's going on here? And I didn't understand the thing, because usually when I read, I like to think about what is going to happen and make predictions. But with this one, I had no idea what was going on. So it was one of the books that I really loved because of this, because not many books surprised me in this way. So I really love the series. And I have a question for you. I wanted to ask, what are some of your favorite books?
Goodness, that is a hard one to ask a writer. I mean, some always favorite Lord of the Rings series. I've loved that since I was a teen. I didn't read that, I think, until I was 16 or 17, which is older than a lot of people that I know first read The Lord of the Rings. But it's something that I find sort of just, it's so richly created and imagined, and there are certain limitations, as any book of a certain era might have, but I also think that there's something to learn. There's the craft of it, the fact that Tolkien created several languages and then created the books around languages. I'm really fascinated by the way that people write and people's different authors' writing processes. I've read Stephen King, who's one of my favorite authors. I love The Stand. That's probably my favorite Stephen King novel. The Lord of the Rings, The Stand, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. I read formative age, too young, because everyone said I was too young, so of course I read it. That was my form of rebellion, was reading books that I probably shouldn't have been reading. Jurassic Park, another one I read, gosh, I was 11, I think, when I first read Jurassic Park, which is different from the movie Jurassic Park. I just reread it a couple of weeks ago, and it's still great. So yeah, those are some favorites. More modern favorites would be the Shadowhunters series, specifically the Cassie gets better, I think, just with every book, and the Shadowhunters universe continues to just blow my mind. Holly Black is just another writer who I admire intensely. Lee Bardugo, her work, I know she's part of the festival. Like, all of these writers, modern fantasy writers, are so deeply, infinitely impressive. I'm just trying to glance at my bookshelves. Oh, I'm missing a couple of favorites, which is weird. I always push them on other people. Lexicon by Max Barry is one that not a lot of people have heard of, but it's phenomenal. It just starts from the first page and just takes you on a ride. The Rook by Daniel O'Malley, which was turned into a TV show, which I would recommend watching. If you're going to watch it after you read the book, because the book is so different and the book has a voice that is hilarious and funny, and it's like a smarter, cleverer British Men in Black almost, but from a female protagonist point of view. It's great, and I pushed that one also on everyone I know. And oh my god, I'm missing Kendra Blake. She's one of my favorite authors. She's an auto-buy for me. The Three Dark Crowns series was just mind-blowing, one of my favorites. I'm behind on reading new books from new authors that I love, especially new YA authors. I try not to read, I don't actually read a lot of YA while I'm writing it, and I feel like I'm always writing it, so I almost have to take breaks away. I could talk about this. I could just, like, if I just showed you shelves, they could go floor to 15-foot ceiling. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot there, but Dracula, just behind me, Dracula, Portnoy's Complaint, like, these are all favorites. And yeah, I'm just, like, always looking for new authors who are going to grab me in a new, fresh way, and for recommendations. I love horror, and I've recently discovered the authors C.J. Tudor, who is British. He's a British horror writer. T.K. Kingfisher is another horror writer, who I believe is a children's book novelist, middle grade or YA, but that's her horror pseudonym, T.K. Fisher. And then Anaya Alborn, The Bird Eater, is a terrifying book and excellent. Heartily recommend. So yeah, those are some book recommendations, book favorites. Got it all.
And another question that I have for you is, if you would have to describe the main characters in your book series by using colors, what color would you associate with the characters?
Wow, that's an interesting one. Okay, this might be a challenge. Okay, Mara Red. I thought into and was like, let me just go with first instinct. Mara Red, Noah Gold, Jamie Blue, Daniel. What is Daniel's color? Maybe silver? I don't know. This is tough. This is a tricky one. I also feel like there's a whole spectrum of colors that I'm missing. Like I should be picking like cerulean or indigo, something more fun colors, but I'm just giving you like red. Yeah, I mean, maybe Mara's color is black, but I feel like it's red, even though she would not say it's red.
And
But
my last question for you is, what's some writing advice that you would have to give for young writers that are trying to write their first book?
I think the writing advice that I would give to writers who are trying to write their first or their 15th book is the same thing that I tell myself when I'm trying to sit down and write. And it's just, you know, write the story that I alone can write. You know, just write the story that only you can write, because everyone has a unique perspective. And that's something that was really compelling to me with this series in particular. Events can be presented one way, and then everyone observing them can have a different perception of those events, whether they happened, whether, you know, they have the same impact, you know, whether they bring out the same feelings. And so everyone should appreciate that, you know, as a writer, you know, as a human being, you have a valuable perspective. You have, you know, there's something that you have to say that no one else can say. And I think that until you figure out as a writer what that thing is for your story, it might be an uphill battle. Like I've found that with myself. Like until I know, sometimes I don't know what I'm trying to say until after it's done, and then I realize it. But I do always know, at this point, I know what the characters want, and then that helps me. I'm not really concerned with messages, but I'm concerned with the characters' perspectives and the characters doing things that are authentic to who they are and true to themselves, things that, you know, inform the plot and move it forward in ways that feel earned instead of, you know, just thrown together, for lack of a better word. I was going to use a different word, which I'm glad I did. Yeah, so yeah, write the story that only you can write, and keep going. Never give up, because as long as you, I mean, the only people who lose are the people who quit entirely. And doesn't matter how much time you take away or time you take from writing, you know, when the blank page, the words, you know, the pen, the paper, it's always going to be there for you. Your thoughts will always be there for you, and you'll have something to say. So
thank you so much.
Keep going. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Bianca. Anna Diana, you have the honor of the last questions because we have only 7 minutes left.
Hi, Michelle. My name is Diana, and on Instagram, my name is DiaBooks20. I really love the Mara Dyer series, discovering it from a friend. Not sure, I haven't read it yet because of college, university. I have a question.
Yeah.
Apart from the kind of book you do, what kind of books would like to experiment with?
What kind of books would I, as a writer, like to write, or what? I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand really the question. Could you just clarify what you mean?
Yeah.
So I guess Anna Diana wants to know what kind of books would you like to write, maybe before, after YA?
What kind of, right, got it. What kind of other, what are my other things? Got it.
I don't speaking English very well, and
no, you speak perfectly. I was just like, I'm just trying to make sure I have a handle on the question. I've been obsessed with sort of writing an epistolary novel, just like in letters, emails, texts, just letters to each other. And I've brought some of that to the Mara Dyer and Noah Shaw series, but I would love to do one that's entirely in those books. I'd like to write, I am writing books for adults. I'm writing middle grade. I am writing other young adult novels. They span from sort of slightly alternate reality, like magical realism-ish, to fantasy, to horror. They're just, I guess the common theme that they all have is that they're books that I want to read that don't exist yet. And that's how I figure out what I want to do and make my writing choices. So, or things that I wish that I had, you know, like for example, the middle grade is very much something that a project that's been percolating for a really long time, and only recently, especially as someone I know is sort of coming into like this a place where she's able to read and fully grasp the kinds of things it's a book that she would like. And so yeah, everything. I'm not sure. I mean, I might write romance, but it's not something. I think that's probably the only genre that's not represented is just like a straight like adult romance. That's not something that I've done. I've experimented. There's romance in most of the books that I write, especially all of them actually. But it's yeah, I guess it'll qualify for that genre. That might be the only one that's left out. They're definitely left out of the middle grade. No romance for kids.
Okay, thank you, Diana. And the last message, I think, is just a message from Dane. And it says like that: I just finished rereading the Reckoning from the second time this year, my favorite book of yours and ever, before the call started. And I wanted to know how hard the book was to write, considering Noah's relationship / mental space and the larger plot. The book is truly a masterpiece and crafted so well.
Thank you so much, Dane. That means the world to me. Really does. I can't tell you how meaningful that is to hear. It was extremely difficult to write for a number of reasons. The books, the Noah Shaw series, was acquired by a different editor from the person who worked on the first two books. So that was a change. That's something that's a challenge, as I was expressing before. And it was also difficult because, Noah's in a headspace that is not a great one. And I know that because I've been there myself. I've experienced depression and anxiety and things that he wrestles with. In my case, they're because of the health issues that they're directly correlated to, my health. Like I have a thyroid condition. So if my thyroid is out of whack, then I'll end up feeling really down and horrible about everything else. And that can put me in a bad mental space. But I have to, recognize that, there's an actual medical cause for me that, is underlying everything in address. And for Noah, what's impossible is that because he has a healing factor, he's ostensibly to the outside world in perfect shape. There's nothing wrong, and he's got nothing to complain about. He's so wealthy, he's attractive, he's talented, he can do anything he likes. But there is a hole at the center of him, and not knowing or being able to really interrogate just because he's a teenage boy, the reasons for why that might be, and how to address it, especially because it's coming from a paranormal place. And I wanted to build that into the paranormal aspect of their abilities, and just to have, you know, everything, every gift has a cost, you know, and yeah, I needed to stay with it. And I sort of drew on a personal well of, you know, tough things, but wanted it, you know, the honesty in making sure it was important to me that the feelings that he expresses on the page felt authentic and honest to people who are going through the same thing. And I know that there are many of us, and that's, I think, the most critical thing for me. So if it resonated with you, I'm happy. I definitely hope that, you know, that you and everybody are able to, unlike Noah, have an easier time talking to people and getting help and seeking treatment, and you know, just having therapy is an incredible resource. Having a good medical team is an incredible privilege. You know, those are all really important things to do. But Noah doesn't have all that stuff, and so yeah, it is tough. Hopefully.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. It was a wonderful meeting, and thank you, girls, for your questions. I had almost 20 questions for you, but I only used 5 of them. So maybe we shall meet again soon.
I would love
And thank you, everyone. And please don't forget to check in the news about FestivalYA and the next book of Michelle Hodkin. It is work in progress, and it will be on the market soon.
Amazing.
So I hope, Michelle, we will see you maybe online or maybe live in Romania this year or next year, finger crossed. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening or a great Sunday for you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. It was an honor, pleasure to be here. I hope to see you all soon. I'm going to say live, and then if not live, then virtually. Thank you for being here. And
thank you.